Hi everyone. Well, there's a lot going on out there with the Queen's death, and I want to tie this all into the Pope's visit and the ritual that he had done here in Canada, and also the color purple, because the purple rain is all tied to the Queen, and how that all ties into Prince. And then it all ties into the First Nations people and their wampum belts, and that all ties into the Pope as well, from a wampum that was created back in 1610. So it's an ongoing story that's all connected, right? So it's hard for me to just talk about one subject because it all intermingles. And if you've been following my channel, you'll be able to keep up with all this information. But if you haven't watched my channel, you need to go back and watch the Jubilee of the Queen, because it was all done with the DNA of the Tree of Life. And so I'm always just building on the story, right? I can't stop and repeat everything for everyone that hasn't been following my channel, so you have to do your own homework. So let's get into it, and we'll talk about the date that she died and also the date that they've chosen for her funeral. On her Jubilee, she was wearing green, but the crown had the world inside of it, and she touched the world. Underneath the stand was the blue pillow, but also the purple stand. Okay, so everything about the Queen is always about purple. She wears purple a lot. I think Biden's inauguration, all the women were wearing purple. So, the color purple is something I want to dive into because it ties to Venus. Right? Everything goes back to Venus. Why? Because Venus is the woman in the sky. She's the virgin. She's Lucifer. She's love. She's having a relationship with Mars, who is war. And there's always this symbolism of the birth of Venus that happens in the sea, right? With the famous painting of Botticelli. So let's get into all of this and how it all ties together. A lot of this information was tied to the holiday that I just took when I went to the sea of the islands of Ile de Magdalene, or Ile de Magdalene. Jacques Cartier called the island Magdalene. So it's all tying into the Virgin Mary. And I'll go over a little bit of my vacation and how some of the things I found there and some of the symbolism that I was working with when I was there in regards to the foam of the sea, because Venus comes through the ocean on a shell, and she's on the foam of the sea, which is actually Uranus, heaven. Is his castration was the foam. Okay, so it's all tied in. Okay, so the whole symbolism that they're showing us with the Queen is they're kind of like making it seem like she's Venus. Okay, so that she is the woman in the sky. Now, the song Purple Rain is really relevant because the B side of the song of the album is called God. Okay, so the purple rain can also be referencing to the purple rain, which is REIGN, which is the reign of the Queen. Okay, and what that represents. Okay, so let's get into the lyrics of the God song. Okay, so here are the lyrics. The Lord thy God he made the seas. He made the fruit upon the trees. When he saw that it was good, he made a man. He made a man, only he could, only he could. God made you, God made me too. He made us all equally. Now you say, God made you, God made me. He made us all equally. Wake up, children. Dance the dance electric. There isn't much time. Who screamed? Was it you? You can go listen to Prince doing this live, and he actually goes on and talks to the audience a bit more at the end, and I'll drop the link for that video. But the whole thing about Virgo, right? Virgo represents the house of slavery or the house of health. In modern terms of astrology, they say it's the house of improvement, but in the esoteric astrology, it was really the house of slavery. So it's really service to others, and you serve the others to the detriment of self. Can be the negative aspect of Virgo. right? But we also have the Zavi-Java star there. We also have the whole alignment of Washington, D.C. is all aligned to the spring triangle that has Virgo in it. And here is the etymology of the word of Virgo. The folk etymology of the word virgin comes from ver and gene. So the man woman or the androgen a gene. So it's like androgynous. So because it's ruled by Mercury, which is the man, and then Venus is the woman, and they have a child which is actually called hermaphroditus. And so it is that androgynous theme to it, right? And so I always see that a little bit like the negative side of it would be transhumanism, right? So you don't have a gender anymore. Now, Prince has shown up in the news a couple of days ago. They have a drink now called Purple Gain, and the Prince estate wins the trademark ruling against the energy drink. So they brought the Purple Rain, with his song back into the news feed. So when she died on September 8th, Osiris was between uh, the two pillars, which is Cancer and Leo, the moon and the sun, right? Those constellations are ruled by the moon and the sun, the only constellations ruled by that. So the Lion's Gate had Osiris in it, who is the dying king, right? That is reborn, resurrected. And Venus was very close to Regulus, which is the alchemy crown. Okay, so she was on her Venus crown. The sun is at the hind legs of Leo. Leo represents royalty, right? He's the Lion King, but they use the symbol of the lion a lot, and it's because he's the royal sign. Now, you also see Mercury here, and he is in conjunction with the Porrima star, which is like the hero star. And I circled, well, I actually made a triangle of the Washington Triangle, which is what Washington is aligned to. So Arcturus would be the White House. Then we have Spica, which is the left hand of Virgo, which is the Washington Monument. And then the Capitol building is Regulus, where Venus is almost in conjunct on Leo's shoulder, right? So, it's not a coincidence that she died in the spring triangle, right? Because everything is to do with the spring, because that's when Venus is born. We need to follow where the moon was when she passed, and the moon was in conjunction with Saturn. Now, what's the relevance of this is because the moon is the Tropic of Cancer, right? Which is the summer solstice, and Saturn rules the winter solstice, the Tropic of Capricorn, and Saturn is in Capricorn right now. But it's the fascination that the moon was in conjunct with Saturn. So we have the feminine axis of the cardinal cross, which is Cancer and Capricorn. Okay, so winter solstice, summer solstice. It's really the measuring of the sun, right? Because the sun, the days are getting shorter or longer in those solstices. So anyhow, it's not a coincidence that she passed on this time. And she passed 2 days before the full moon, which is the harvest moon. September 16th, 2 days before her funeral, there is a Sun-Neptune opposition. So Neptune is the god of the sea, right? And the sun, of course, is on Zavi-Java for her funeral. There's no coincidence for that, right? Because we know Zavi-Java is the ascension star. It's also the star that Einstein measured the speed of light from. Okay, so of course, they're doing the ritual with the sun on Zavi-Java. And that's also when we have the blood moon, right? At 322 on Pi Day on 2025, Pi Day being March 14th. We have a blood moon happening at 322 on Zavi-Java. The actual day of her funeral, we have a moon opposition with the Golden Gate on one axis, which is the north-south axis. And then on the east-west, we have a Jupiter-Mercury opposition. Okay, now these are all representing the immutable cross. Okay, and I keep telling you guys that the immutable cross is the cross of groupthink, it's service to others, but it's the AI cross that they're pushing people onto, the AI cross. Okay, it's all service to others at detriment to self, and there's no Venus on that cross, and there's no Saturn. So there's no key because Saturn holds the key. There's no love because Venus is love. It's Mercury, Mercury, Jupiter, Jupiter. Okay, that's what rules, because Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, and then this axis has got Jupiter on the tail of the whale at the east, and then the moon is in Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury, and then Virgo is Mercury, and the Mercury is there. So there, it's a total ritual to the mutable cross. Okay, so her funeral. So it's the ritual to the AI. Group sync, service to others, metaverse. That's where they're trying to take people. There's always a positive, right? So the positive side of the mutable cross is you care about helping people. The androgynous part about it is just balancing your mind and your heart, because Venus rules the heart, but she's actually ruling your third eye, and then Mercury rules your mind, but he's actually down just above your heart, where your thymus is. See it as negative, or you can just understand it that the alchemy happens within. It's not on the outside of you. It's not on the self, okay? It happens within. You have to become androgynous within yourself. Chopping body parts off and taking pharmaceuticals to become a look, So we have to understand that they're trying to project the androgynous to the outside world, not to the inner self. Now, I did the gematria on the number 251, and the reason I did that was because the day she died, September 8th, is the 250th first day of the year with 114 days left. Okay, so of course the 251 adds to 8, right, in all forms of gematria. 8 being the infinity symbol, because also 8, the Leo card, the strength card in the tarot deck, has the infinity symbol over top of the woman putting the hand in the lion's mouth, okay, in the tarot. So it's always to do with strength, which is like royalty, right? So the number 8 is important. So, but what's fascinating is the reverse ordinal has a ritual sacrifice as 251. Full reduction is 73, and you'll see in this date calculation we have 7 months and 3 days. And of course the numbers 251, they switched it up from her jubilee to the date of her death. They're using 215, so they're still using the 8, the 2, 1, and 5 add to 8. And then they have 7 months and 3 days. So I know the sacred number 37 is esoteric number. And so they basically, timed this perfectly to the 251. And from her husband's death, which happened on Unicorn Day, which is April 9th, celebrated in Scotland, Unicorn Day. And, this April 9th is tying to for the number 49, which is when the soul is supposed to enter the body during the 49th day through a pregnancy. But, this is funny because from his date of death to hers, it was exactly 17 months. 17, the letter for, the number for the letter Q. Wanted to do a little bit of memory lane on September 8th. So in 1858, Abraham Lincoln supposedly says in a speech, "You may fool all the people some of the time. You can even fool some of the people all of the time, but you can't fool all of the people all of the time." So that's kind of a little pun that they picked this day because, it's like, can you see through the illusion or not? And this was amazing for me because Ernest Hemingway did his novel. He published his novel on this day, The Old Man and the Sea. And I was asked to read this book when I was in high school. And this book really had some, I don't know, effect on me. And I didn't know at the time why I was so fascinated by this book. But if you'd taken my mythology class, which was my last class on my courses, you'll know who the old man is, okay? And so, anyhow, I'm not going to let that out because it's kind of an esoteric secret, And I do hope that you guys support my channel and help me with all this time that I put into all this work. And of course, September 8th is when Star Trek came out, okay, in 1966. And also 1966 on this day, the Severn Bridge between England and Wales is officially opened by Queen Elizabeth II. Now, this is really relevant because if you understand the history between Wales and England, how they were always trying to fight for their autonomy, and how they were actually genocided with their language, because the Welsh language actually decodes the Egyptian cuneiforms. So it heals the body. So, there's always this war going on between England and Wales. And a lot of the founding fathers of the United States are Welshmen. Okay, so they wanted to get away from the monarchy. And the fact that they built this bridge on the day that she died, so it was actually 56 years later, and 5 and 6 are, of course, linked to DNA, right? That's all your DNA is based on 5 and 6, which is the number 11, right? This is what we're in, the two pillars. So anyhow, I just find this all very fascinating. I want to go into a little bit of history of that river. But here again, at the top here, sorry, it's just coming into the screen here, is that they even started the animated series of Star Trek on this day. Okay, so basically September 8th is Star Trek Day. It's probably because 8 and 9 add to 17, which is the star card. And also Gerald Ford pardons former President Richard Nixon. Oprah Winfrey starts on this day as well in 1986. And then Biden, this is interesting. Administration releases blueprint calling for 44% of American electricity to come from the sun by 2050. Currently, it's only 3%. So, wow. So that ties into the sun, into this whole story to this day. And it's kind of weird because Prince's song about God talks about electricity in your body, right? The electric body. The Severn Bridge in Welsh is Pont Hafren, and pont is a French word for bridge. So the Welsh, the Irish, the Scottish, and the Brittany French were all against the English, okay? Like they did not want the monarchy to take away, their culture. And this all goes back to the whole family of Canada and everything, and what happened to the French people, and I'll go into that a little bit more. But this bridge is so important because it has mythology with the Hafren in the Welsh mythology. Heffron was a legendary princess, a British princess, who was drowned in the river Severn by her stepmother, Gwendolyn. Okay, so it was in the Geoffrey Monmouth writings. So there's this whole legend of this princess drowning in this river. The name Severn is thought to be derived from, possibly from the older form Sama Rosina, meaning end of summertime, follow. The name is recorded in the Latinized form Sabrina in the 2nd century. The Welsh form of the name is Hafren. Okay, Sabrina was a nymph who was drowned in Shrewsbury. There are now is a statue of Sabrina in the Dingle Gardens at the quarry, as well as a metal sculpture erected in 2013. There is a different deity associated with the Severn estuary, Nodin, represented as a mounted on a seahorse, riding the crest of the. So the Severn boar, is also a wave. Okay, so the wave with a crest on it, like like you're riding the wave like Neptune does. So the Nodens is a god worshipped in ancient Britain. Although no physical depiction of him has survived, votive plaques found in the shrine at Lindy Park, Gloucestershire, indicates his connection with dogs, a beast associated with healing, symbolism in antiquity. Now it's really weird because my mom was from Gloucestershire, and it's getting really because this is all tying into the Welsh prince, and my bloodline goes back to the Welsh prince, that was basically taken over by the British, and then they stole even the title Prince of Wales, right? So the Welsh had their own monarchy, and the English destroyed it. Okay, so and the last prince basically faked his own death. Nobody knows where he was buried. They say he died, but nobody knows. And I do believe, the bloodline just continued. So, they're out there, So, but my actually family bloodline is tied to this monarchy. So it's just really weird for me because it's like everything is happening is just constantly coming back into my timeline. And I'm sure that's happening to you guys too, because I know you share your stories with me. And it's almost like we've mapped out our own lives to help us awaken, right? So it's like we picked our own path, or we even picked our own family bloodline that we chose to incarnate into to help us awaken. So the Welsh prince, the last Welsh prince, Owen ap Gruffydd, is tied into the Severn. Okay, in Shakespeare, Henry IV, Part 1, Henry Hotspur Percy recalls the valor of Edmund Mortimer, the Earl of March, in a long battle against the Welshman Owen Gwyndwi. He had different names upon the banks of the Severn. Okay, so he was, I guess his final battle was on the Severn. And, this was weird that they created this bridge and it's on the exact same day, that she died because she not, opened the bridge on the same day. So it's like, I do believe it's all tied in, to all of this. I think Princess Diana knew the kind of slap in the face that they had taken the titles because she was Princess of Wales, right? And when she went to Wales, she actually, took the time to learn Welsh so she could greet the people. And, it's just, the British monarchy doesn't do that, like they just, always speak English. And they're, even though they're saying that they're the prince and princesses of Wales. What they're omitting here is when he's mentioned in the Shakespeare play, he is mentioned to be a magician. So he is worshipped in many different forms. Like he has like memorial statues of him at Cardiff City Hall. There's poems. There's TV shows mentioning him. He's the celebrity. He's basically represents the father of Welsh nationalism. Okay, because he was the last reigning prince. There's even an equestrian statue of him. You can Google the list of Welsh monarchy, and he's the last one. And they're saying here, secretly buried in 1415 at the age of 55, 56. Okay, so it's, and it's actually like 56 years since she, created this bridge. So on the same day, right, as her death. So it's all tied together, for sure it is. So let's get into the significance of the color purple and how this all ties into the sea. It's all about the sea and seashells. It ties to the Tyrian purple, okay, which was all to do with the Phoenicians, the Phoenician purple. It is secreted by several species of a predatory sea snail in the family of Murascidae, rock snails, originally known by their name murex. Biologically, pigments were often difficult to acquire, and the details of their production were kept secret by the manufacturers. Tyrian purple is a pigment made from the mucus of several species of murex snails. Production of the Tyrian purple for use as a fabric dye began as early as 1200 BC by the Phoenicians and was continued by the Greeks and the Romans until 1453 with the fall of Constantinople. The pigment was expensive and complex to produce, and items colored with it became associated with power and wealth. Here's a picture of the different colors of fabric dye that come from the different shells. And we'll get into the shells, and I want to compare the shells that they were using compared to the shells that the First Nation people on Turtle Island, which is North America, were using. Because there's a little bit of a twist in the story with the shells. Okay, so now this is exactly the same color as what they used at Biden's inauguration. So here they're talking about the Mediterranean cultures, including the Minoans, the Canaanites, the Phoenicians, the Hebrew, and the classic Greeks, created dyes from the snails. One of the dye's main chemical ingredients is a red dibromo, indigo tin. The main component of the Tyrrhenian purple is the tecolate. The dye will turn indigo blue, similar to the color of blue jeans, if exposed to sunlight before the dye sets. But guess what? Look at the real color of this. It's the kind of robin's egg blue, Tiffany blue color. And this is the color she wore for her Sapphire Jubilee in 2022. And of course, Melania Trump followed suit as Jackie Kennedy also wore the color and made it famous. And Melania wore it with Trump's inauguration, which just so happened to be totally aligned to the heliacal rising of Osiris, right? And so now we have the death of the queen with Osiris in the Lion's Gate. Now, this purple shell all ties into the wampum belts that were used as kind of like the constitutions between the natives and the settlers that were coming here. They were using wampum belts as, basically the first constitutions because they didn't know how to write, right? So they would present them the belt, which would have symbolism on it to say what it meant. Okay, so these were really valued, and they were also almost like used as a way to, if you were going down the river and you had a wampum belt on, nobody would shoot you. It was like you were a delegate and you were like not really taking any sides. It was like a peace treaty. Okay, so they were made with these channeled whelk shells, and the purple beads were made from quahogs, okay, which were like clamps. And I want to get into the etymologies of these shells because, again, they're representing Venus. So in North America, the white shell was the whelk, and then the purple shell was the clam. Now, in the Phoenicians, it was a whelk that was making the purple. Okay, so it was a different type of whelk that created the purple. But in North America, it was a clam shell that was creating the purple. And here's a website that's selling the wampum shells, and they're using the scientific name as mercenary, deriving from the Latin word wages. So they were it was tied into money. It was like their currency, also the wampum belts. But it reminds me of Mercury because Mercury also rules finance. They're explaining it here how the wampum briefly became legal tender for North Carolina in 1710, but its use as common currency died out in New York by the early 18th century. Very recently, it was discovered that one of the quahogs retrieved from the shores of Iceland had grown to an incredible age of 507 years old and was still growing. Scientists now believe that there are likely other quahogs still growing, which are several hundred years old, named Ming, because it was alive during the Ming Dynasty. The 507-year-old quahog made headlines around the world. Now, this is tying into how, like I said, it was the Constitution. You're looking at the first draft of the Constitution. And this was a Hiawatha belt, wampum belt. And this is now currently the flag with Takeri Tekawitha Reservation in Kanawaki, south of Montreal. So this is all tying into the Pope's visit, okay? Because he was worshiping Kateri Tekakwitha because he went to the church where her statue is, and at Saint Anne de Beaubry. And he went to this ritual, what he did in Nunavut, where he went to this town called the translation was Plenty of Fish on a ley line. I explained that before, and I'll do more on the ley lines and how this is all tying into everything. I will do that in one of my courses. I'll do the whole ley line class, but it's all tying into the natives and their right to their constitutional right was actually taken away from them when they had actually created these sacred wampum belts for their freedom. So here's the flag that they use in Kanawaki. They also use this Mohawk flag, but this is the other flag they're using. And they have all the tribes, one worshiping the eastern door, the western door, and then, the pine tree is in the center, this white pine. I'll go into that as well a little bit later on. I just want to go a little bit more into the shells and the wampum. Here I found the actual name of the murex that they used in the Phoenician form, making the purple dye, and the name is the Venus comb murex. So they're actually saying this shell is Venus. So that was a whelk, and then we also have a Neptuna liata, which is also known as the lyre whelk. And, fascinating that they put the etymology of Neptune into the whelk as well, plus the lyre, which the lyre is also to do with freedom because you want to listen to the lyre rather than listening to the sirens and get pulled off your boat away from the mast, this big wooden obelisk that's in the middle of the boat. You want to be tied to that so you don't get taken into the spell of the sirens that pull you into the sea. Now, the fascinating thing is about a whelk will open up a clam shell and kill it. Okay, clams live on algae, but a whelk lives on, it's a cannibalistic creature. Okay, so it eats the vegetarians, basically. So it's, the whelk are pretty keen hunters. They can use their radula, a tongue-like organ for feeding, to drill a hole into the shell of their prey. So yeah, so they're pretty fierce. So Venus is fierce. The spiral formation inside the conch is symbolic of infinity, the space which gradually expands in a clockwise rotation. The shell is like the human journey of life. The hard casting protects life, the pearl inside, the scallop or oyster, and its aquatic nature associates it with the feminine, lunar, and virginity that is a symbol is symbolic in music. The conch shell spiral and the relation to water cause it to represent the beginning of existence. Also, the sound like the place the poet William Butler Yeats wrote about this shell, so in his poems. So it got a little bit confusing for me because I was trying to figure out when I was listening to a First Nation person talk about the wampum belts. He was talking about the purple representing the war, and then the white representing the white chain, which represented peace. So I was kind of like, okay, so why is Venus war? Is it because she's linked to Mars? And then I was really thinking the quahog, which was the clam shell that was getting eaten, was Venus. Because of the name here, they have Venus merceniera instead of mercenaria mercenario, which in some forms it's, they're using the double name. But here they're saying the American market clam is Venus mercenaria. So I'm like, okay, so that's a bit weird. So, is it the whelk that is Venus or is it the clam? right? So me personally, after studying all this now, I really do think it's the whelk is Venus, right? And then it's also the whelk, it's like it's confusing, right? Because if the whelk is the white part of the wampum belt and the purple is also the whelk, then where's the clam fit in, right? So the clam is supposed to be the purple part in the native format. So it's like they switched the clam to be Venus in North America, and then the white whelk is peace. And then in the Phoenician times, the whelk was the purple dye that they were using for their clothing. So I'm like, okay, so they kind of did a swap on the whelk, right? So is whelk the peace or is whelk, the war, right? The purple. So it's kind of funny. So just to understand that in that tradition. Whelk lay their eggs in a long spiral-shaped casting that can reach up to 33 inches in length. So there's the number 33. Now we understand how that ties into the shell. The strand contains up to 200 small pouches, and each pouch contains up to 99 eggs. So there's the number 99, which represents peace. The feminine protects the string of eggs by anchoring one end at the bottom of the ocean. So there you're grounded, right? That's the string that ties you down to the inner earth, which is your anchor. So you don't float away, basically. So this, going back to this symbol with the purple and the white. So in North America, the purple is actually the clam, and the whelk is the white. Okay, so now the white has this white pine tree. So let's get into the symbolism of that again. It's also the flag of the Iroquois Confederacy. And here you see the Hiawatha belt, which is the wampum belt. The tree in the center is the tree of peace for the Iroquois Confederation. And the eastern white pine is the provincial tree for Ontario. It also was used as a filter to clean bacteria from contaminated water. Now, this part is really interesting because during the 17th and 18th centuries, the white pines in the 13 colonies became the masked pines, marked by agents of the British Royal Navy. They ended up exporting I think 4,000 or 4,500 of these white pines. There was actually a tree riot, okay, because I guess the natives didn't want them to be taking all these pines down and using them for masts in the boat. So I'm starting to see, like my last video when we were talking about the mast in the ship, as at that place with all the fountains, right, in Rome, you know, that looks like an obelisk to me. So I'm starting to think like this obelisk is like really a tree. I always said it was the tree, the sigillaria tree. But this is, tying into confirming that this the tree is the mast in the ship. Okay, so I think like we're in a big ship. North America is a big ship, and the obelisk at Washington is the mask, right? It's like the tree of life. So it's really cool because we're starting to find out what all this means in history. Now, the Pope flew in to Montreal when he landed in Canada, and Montreal recently has put the white pine on their flag. Okay, they have the fleur-de-lis, they have the shamrock for the Irish, they have the thistle for the Scottish, and the rose for the English, the fleur-de-lis for the French, and they put on this white pine in the middle of the Red Cross. Now, the Red Cross is used for the Micmac. Okay, the Micmac were a very peaceful indigenous people that got along perfectly well with the French settlers in Acadia. Like they actually settled on the Micmac were on the Ile de Magdalene. They were all on the East Coast, like in Nova Scotia and PEI, and they for a century they were living cohabiting with the Micmac and peacefully living together. And then the British came and destroyed that. And there's this whole history of how um, the the French, were actually not allowed to worship the Roman Catholic religion because the English wanted to destroy that. And it's because, okay, this is what I just recently found out. This is the mind blowing part about it. It's because of this ancient treaty that the Vatican had promised the natives in 1610, and it's called the Vatican Concordat. Okay, and it was a wampum belt of peace and freedom for the natives. But what they had to do was that they had to declare themselves as Roman Catholic. And if they declared themselves as Roman Catholic, they were allowed to keep their lands. Okay, so this is why the British came in and really wanted to destroy the French, because the French were, supporting the Indians to become Roman Catholic, right? So then they had to destroy that so that they could, take away the lands from the natives. It's like fascinating, and then they ended up, exiling all the French inhabitants on, Nova Scotia, and ended up putting them down in Louisiana. They pulled them off their lands because the lands were so rich in Nova Scotia. And I'll drop a video of this lady, an Acadian lady, explaining all this. And this is how I learned it, listening to her video. And I started to dig on it, and I was like, oh my God, this is all tying in now to the Pope's visit and the Queen. Okay, now the Pope left Quebec, well, the Nunavut, East Coast native village, and 42 days later, the Queen dies. Okay, the 42 are the 42 judges in Egyptian mythology. So this is a total ritual, and what they don't want people to know is that there was a treaty, right, for these natives, for their own freedom, and going back to working with the lands and being at peace with nature. They don't want this because that's how we're self-healing. When we live like that, we're self-healing. And there's lots of ancient texts saying that when you're in balance with the earth, air, water, and fire, when you can walk on the foam of the sea, where you're connected with the sun above you, the earth below you, the water and the air in the foam, when you're in total balance of these four elements, you are a self-healing person. Okay, so this is what this is all about. That's why it's always about Venus. They always want to take the symbolism of Venus away, because Venus is the foam of the sea. That is where she is reborn. So here's the Vatican wampum belt. The particular wampum represents the important agreement between the Grand Chief, member two, and the Micmac in the Micmac district and the Roman Catholic Church, as represented by missionaries in 1610. Grand Chief Member 2 became the first North American native to be baptized a Catholic. Shortly after the baptism, Member 2 asked the Jesuit missionaries to that the Micmac to Pope Paul V in Rome, a sign of the nation's good faith. The belt is still held by the Vatican, and the Micmac leaders are currently trying to repatriate it as an important cultural artifact. The Iroquois used wampum as person's credentials or certificate of authority. Here you can see a bunch of chiefs with them on their laps. So this constitutional wampum in 1610 with the Vatican, you can see all the symbols at the bottom where it's all spread out. And I just want to go over the meaning of the symbols. At the end of the wampum is a symbol of the 12 apostles of Niskam's child, Jesus Christ, who have spread the God's message to the world. Church built on the rock. The second symbol is the church built upon the rock St. Peter's. Now there was a church in Ile de Magdalene called St. Peter's. The symbol of the church with an open window represents the principle of each Micmac had the right to accept or reject Catholicism through individual choice. Also, the open church must accommodate the Micmac language and culture. So they wanted the priest to speak Micmac. That was part of the agreement. In the ancient Micmac hieroglyphic script, the council freely grants forever the Catholic Church the right to build and keep churches on the Micmac lands, as well as the privilege that its priests may conduct masses and teach in the Micmac language. The keys of St. Peter. The keys of St. Peter represent the Grand Chief's recognition of the Pope's spiritual and political authority in the world, including the Micmac. The keys are placed on the belt to symbolize the Vatican's protection of the Micmac nation and its people under the authority of God. No power on earth could attempt to harm the Micmac Catholics. And then the British came in. The fifth symbol, the black robe, represents the priests. This figure, together with the Micmac figure holding the cross, illustrates the union of the Church and the Micmac Grand Council. Each are equal and sacred to the alliance. The small bundle of Micmac holds represents the retention of the Micmac sovereignty and cultural rights within the alliance. Micmac cultural rights will be especially accommodated within the church. The sixth symbol, the cross spears, represents the Grand Chief's promise to plant Christ's lessons of wisdom, truth, and forgiveness in the hearts of all Micmac, like the spears struck in the ground. The seventh symbol, the peace pipe and the battle axe, reflects the Grand Chief's pledge to follow the path of brotherly love and to protect those who join in this holy alliance. The eighth, the left side represents the agreement of the Roman Catholic Church with the Micmac Grand Council. The markings on the left represents the 7 Micmac districts. This means that all 7 districts join in the Concordat with the Holy Father. Note should be made that 2 pieces of coarse twine that are attached to the belt. These are short pieces on either coarse twine or some rough fiber that now remain on the belt, but their functions are not known. One is 15 millimeters long, passes through the belt, and has a knot on the observed side. The similar short piece pierces the belt between row 1 and row 2, close to the center of the 4B zigzag. The placement of the possible attachment between the kneeling figure and the cross spears may be significant, but no suggestion can be made at this time. Note who should be made that there are varying degrees of damage and bead loss from the belt. Oral tradition states this could be the oldest known wampum belt given and as early as 1610. The Vatican belt was made at the Lac des Deux Mountains, Lake of Two Mountains missionary community in Montreal. Whoa, it's always back to Montreal where I live. Ah! So I guess back in the day, 1600s, Pope Paul V was a good guy. He's even honoring Galileo here, and as an astronomer, and he was put him into the member of the papal. So like they were not like demonizing astrology at that point. Okay, so and he was honoring the Micmac. So I don't know what happened. It all turned around and it got nasty. I have so much more to share with you guys about Montreal, but this was the picture that made me want to go to Ile de Magdalene because to me it looks like a woman on her back with her two breasts and her private parts right there in the middle. Okay, and so I thought, okay, that's why Jacques Cartier called it Ile de Magdalene. They switched it to Ile de Magdalene, but some people still called it Magdalene. But I thought, okay, so this ties into Jesus's supposedly wife, which is the divine feminine, right? All to do with being able to heal yourself in a cave because there's a cave in France that she was working out of, and they tried to demonize her and make her seem like she was a prostitute, but she was healing people in this cave. And then there's all these caves in Ile de Magdalene, and I was being pulled to go there. So I got in a car. We our car broke down twice, one going and one coming back. So that's why I'm a little behind on my scheduling. And I won't be doing the class tonight on the Stellarium course. I'm going to push it to next Friday because I'm just so behind because we lost time. But I just wanted to share some of my trip with you guys. So the population is all French Catholic, mostly on the island. They are an amazing group of people. The hospitality was crazy because it was the weekend with all the locals would go to the campgrounds and party on Labor Day weekend. So I was partying with all the locals. I actually, they were kind of, inviting me because I don't speak French well, and they were like trying to get me to speak French, and I was singing with them, and I had a really great time with them, and they were very, very friendly and didn't judge me because of my lack of ability to be bilingual. So when I was going around the island, I was trying to find religious symbols that were referencing the divine feminine, and of course. My friend, I said, "Oh, there's a statue over there. I bet you it's the Virgin Mary, not Jesus." And she's like, "No, no, no, it's probably Jesus." And then we get up there, and it's actually the Our Lady of Assumption, Notre Dame de Assumption, which ties into August 15th, which is known as the Feast of Assumption, which is all tying into the Virgin Mary Virgo in the sky, right? So it's always about Virgo because the Washington alignment of the Washington triangles aligning to the spring triangle on August 15th for the Virgin, the Feast of Assumption. So there was the statue there. I couldn't believe it. I was like, I can't believe it's like sitting right here on the island. So I just happened by chance pick this camping site, and I was camping right around this top of the rock here. And I was asking everybody where this cave was. I was trying to find this cave, and nobody could tell me where this cave was. And the ironic part about it is that red circle, there's a hole in the middle. That's the cave I was looking for. And I was camped right on top of it the whole time without knowing. And so the only way to get to the cave was from doing paddleboard. Okay, so I had to learn how to paddleboard in the open sea, which I'd never done before. I've never really actually swam in the open sea because I'm not really comfortable in swimming in the ocean because of all the things that are in the ocean. So I had to learn to paddleboard. I ended up jumping off the cliffs of that location, and I found the cave. Okay, and I was taken in there by a local, and the waves were like crashing, and it was kind of violent to be in there, but we got in there and my friend took a picture. So it was like, it was so amazing to go there. And I recommend anybody going there to go there because it's paradise. It's literally paradise. There's 22 miles of beach on either side, or kilometers on either side of the island. The whole island looks like the Phoenix. I really do believe it's the divine feminine. And when I was listening to this Acadian lady talk about the Roman Catholic religion, she was talking about how the Roman Catholic religion is more worshiping the feminine. Okay. And that's why the British didn't like it, because they want you to worship more the masculine. Okay. So it's just fascinating. You have to listen to her history lesson about the Acadians and what happened to their culture and what was going on. And now I understand why the natives, you know, converted to Christianity. I was like, why are they all converting? Wait, because they believed the Vatican was going to protect them, okay, from being killed. Okay. And they created this wampum belt in 1610. They believed that they were safe, and that freaking treaty was just, you know, abolished. And thousands of them died when they had faith in the Pope. Okay, so I just really believe this whole thing that's going on is about healing what happened, and being aware of what happened. Okay, now I'm starting to get the whole picture of why these missionaries were so big, and why so many of these First Nation people were willing to give up their culture um, for the Pope. Okay, so anyhow, that's the connection that I found, and I know it's a long one, but I just wanted to share this all with you. I have so much more information. I've been saving the wampum belt and now tying it into the purple with the queen, and I think this was a timely thing because it all ties into all the shell collecting that I was doing on the island, and the whelk. The whole thing about the whelk is amazing. And what's crazy is my grandmother had given me three whelk shells when I was about 10 years old, and I still have them. And I'm just fascinated that they're sitting here on my desk. So there you go. It's you gotta, whether the whelk represents the white part of the belt or the purple, it's hard to say, but all I know is, the whelk is the dominant, and it feeds off the other, so maybe it's supposed to be um eating the purple, which is supposed to be war. Maybe the white whelk is supposed to eat the purple, which is Venus in her warrior form. It's hard to say. Or maybe the white whelk is Lucifer. It's hard to know, but it's just there's this whole symbolism between the clan and the whelk, and it's all tying into Venus. Don't forget to like and subscribe to help the algorithms with my information. And also, sign up for some of the courses. Even if you sign up for one, it helps out. I'm really, looking for support now because everything's kind of slowing down. And I still want to give you guys this information. Otherwise, I'm going to start spending time, once my course is done, trying to find some other form of income. So anyhow, if you want to support my channel, you're welcome to just either give a donation or sign up for the courses or ask for a reading, or somehow try to support this work, because I do think it's important for our consciousness to understand the symbolism and how we can balance our energies to have maximum health. So bliss to you guys. Take care.